Part 1, The Morning After. Hajin Park woke up to pain. Not the elegant, distant kind that could be ignored. Not the mild throb of a typical hangover. This was the kind that felt personal. It pulsed behind his eyes like a drumbeat, spread down his spine, and settled unpleasantly in places he refused to acknowledge right away. His mouth tasted like stale liquor and regret. His tongue felt too heavy for his skull. For a long moment, Hajin simply lay there, breathing shallowly, letting consciousness seep back in inch by inch. White ceiling. Soft golden light slipping through thick hotel curtains. The faint hum of an air conditioner. Luxury. Expensive. Familiar in the way that all high-end hotels eventually blurred together. His brows furrowed. He didn't remember coming here. He shifted slightly, and hissed. His lower back protested sharply, muscles sore in a way that suggested far too much movement. His thighs ached. Not injured. Not strained. Used. That single word slipped into his mind uninvited. Hajin opened his eyes fully. The bed was massive. Silk sheets, rumpled and twisted like they'd been wrestled with. One pillow lay on the floor. Another was shoved halfway beneath the headboard. And then he noticed. He was naked. Completely. The sheet barely covered his hips, and when he lifted it with unsteady fingers, there was no doubt about it. No boxers. No undershirt. Nothing. His heart gave a heavy, uncomfortable thud. What the hell? His voice came out hoarse. Slowly, carefully, Hajin sat up. The room tilted. He squeezed his eyes shut, waited for the wave of dizziness to pass, then tried again. That was when he saw the marks. Darkened shadows along his collarbone. A faint, bruised crescent near the hollow of his throat. His fingers hovered over it, then brushed lightly against the skin. Tender. His stomach dropped. He twisted his torso, wincing, trying to look at his back using the reflective surface of the floor-length mirror across the room. More marks. Not just one. Several. Scattered, unmistakable. Teeth marks. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. His pulse started to climb. Hajin dragged the sheet off himself and stood, unsteady but driven by rising panic. His inner thighs. Marked. A deep flush crept up his neck. This wasn't just drunken flirting. This wasn't some clumsy kiss in a bar bathroom. Someone had touched him. Extensively. Someone had left their mouth on his body like they had every right to be there. And Hajin Park did not sleep with strangers. He didn't do one-night stands. He didn't lose control. He didn't wake up naked in hotel rooms with mysterious bruises and missing memories. Except apparently, he did. Think, Hajin muttered, pressing his fingers to his temple. Think. You left the office late. You had drinks with, who? Nothing solid surfaced. Only fragments. Laughter. Music. A warm presence close to him. The sense of being watched. Hands, strong ones, settling on his waist. But no face. No name. Just heat. And darkness. His stomach churned. He grabbed the hotel phone with shaky hands. Front desk, a pleasant voice answered. This is Park Hajin in the presidential suite, he said automatically. Did anyone check in with me last night? There was a brief pause. Keyboard tapping. No, sir. You arrived alone at 11:43 p.m. Hajin closed his eyes. Are you sure? Yes, sir. Alone. He hung up without another word. That made no sense. Because the bed beside him. He turned slowly. The left side of the bed was clearly slept in. The sheets were creased. The pillow was indented. There was even a faint scent that wasn't his. Not perfume. Not cologne. Something warmer. Subtle. Clean. Someone had been there. Someone had left. And apparently hadn't bothered to wake him. A sharp edge of humiliation cut through the panic. They used me and left. The idea made his jaw tighten. No. That wasn't fair. He didn't even know what happened. But the thought that someone had walked out while he lay unconscious, sore, marked, and exposed. It made his chest feel tight. Hajin reached for his phone and called the only person he trusted to handle disasters without judgment. Secretary Lee, he said when the call connected. There was a pause. Then, sir. It's barely past 7. Is something wrong? Yes, Hajin said flatly. I'm at the Meridian Hotel. I need you to come here immediately. Understood. He hesitated, then added quietly, and find out who I was with last night. Another pause. Sir. I don't care how, Hajin said. Security footage. Staff. Cameras. Whatever it takes. Yes, sir. The call ended. Silence rushed back in. Too loud. Hajin sank onto the edge of the bed. What kind of person leaves without a word? No note. No number. Not even the decency to stay until morning. Did I say something? Did I embarrass myself? The idea made his stomach twist. He dragged a hand through his messy hair and exhaled slowly. Worse thoughts followed. The marks weren't delicate. They weren't hesitant. They were deliberate. Someone had wanted him. Had held him down. Had bitten him hard enough to bruise. The memory fragments stirred again. A low voice near his ear. Warm breath. A sensation of being pinned to the mattress. Not fear. Not pain. Heat. God. Hajin groaned softly and pressed his face into his hands. This is insane. An hour later felt like an eternity. Hajin had managed to shower, though it hadn't helped much. Warm water revealed more evidence. More faint bruises along his sides. A sensitive spot on his neck that made him flinch when soap touched it. Whoever it was had been thorough. By the time the knock came, Hajin was dressed in borrowed hotel clothes, sitting rigidly on the couch, replaying his non-existent memories for the 100th time. Come in, he said. Secretary Lee stepped inside. He looked wrong. Too pale. Too stiff. Not confused. Not curious. Terrified. Hajin's heartbeat started pounding again. What did you find? Hajin asked. Secretary Lee swallowed. There is security footage from the elevator. Show me. Instead of handing over a tablet, Secretary Lee produced a thick envelope. His hands were shaking. Hajin stared at it. Why are you acting like someone died? Secretary Lee didn't answer. He simply extended the envelope. Hajin took it. For a moment, he didn't open it. Some instinct warned him that once he did, nothing would feel normal again. Then he tore it open. Inside were printed stills from CCTV footage. Grainy. Black and white. Clear enough. The first image showed Hajin stepping out of an elevator. Hair messy. Jacket half unbuttoned. Head tilted slightly, like he was leaning into someone. The second image showed a tall man beside him. One arm around Hajin's waist. The other hand resting possessively at his lower back. Their bodies close. Too close to be mistaken for anything innocent. Hajin's breath caught. He recognized the man instantly. Sharp jaw. Broad shoulders. Familiar eyes. Kang Taewoo. His business rival. The man whose company had undercut his bids. The man who smiled like everything was a chess game. The man he despised. No, Hajin whispered. His fingers trembled as he flipped to the next photo. Taewoo guiding him down the hallway. Hajin's head turned toward him, lips parted as if speaking, or laughing. Taewoo looking down at him. Not smug. Not cold. Soft. Almost gentle. Hajin felt like the floor had vanished beneath him. This isn't real. Secretary Lee said quietly, there are no other records of anyone entering or leaving your room. Hajin's vision blurred. Out of all the people in this city. Out of all the strangers he could have made a catastrophic mistake with. It had to be Kang Taewoo. The enemy. The rival. The man he'd spent years competing against. You're telling me, Hajin said slowly, that I slept with Kang Taewoo. Secretary Lee didn't respond. Because there was nothing to say. Shock gave way to rage. Rage gave way to something far more dangerous. Confusion. Why Taewoo? Why him? And why did Taewoo leave? Had it meant nothing? Or had Taewoo woken up, recognized Hajin beside him, and decided it was a mistake? The thought burned. Hajin clenched the photos in his hands. This wasn't just a scandal waiting to happen. This wasn't just humiliation. This was a collision. Two rivals. One night. And a truth neither of them could pretend didn't exist. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the anger and disbelief, a quieter realization formed. Last night wasn't just an accident. It was the beginning of something neither of them was ready for. And Hajin had no idea whether that terrified him. Or thrilled him more. Part 2, Rivals in Daylight. Hajin did not sleep. If he closed his eyes, he saw grainy black and white images burned into the backs of his eyelids. Kang Taewoo's arm around his waist. Kang Taewoo's body angled protectively toward his own. Kang Taewoo guiding him down a hotel hallway like it was the most natural thing in the world. So Hajin sat in his penthouse office before sunrise, staring at nothing, nursing a cup of coffee he had no intention of drinking. This couldn't be real. People didn't accidentally sleep with their lifelong rivals. People didn't wake up with bite marks from men they despised. And yet. His phone buzzed. Secretary Lee's message was short. Industry summit starts in 2 hours. Kang Taewoo confirmed attendance. Hajin's jaw tightened. Of course he was. The universe clearly had a sense of humor, and it was cruel. 2 hours later, Hajin stood in front of a full-length mirror in the conference center's private lounge, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. Perfect. Every line sharp. Every detail controlled. No one could see the chaos underneath. No one could know that he was still sore. No one could know that under the crisp collar of his white shirt were faint bruises carefully hidden by makeup. No one could know that he hadn't stopped thinking about another man's mouth on his skin. He straightened. Park Hajin, CEO of PH Tech composed. Untouchable. Not a man who woke up naked in a hotel room. The doors to the main hall slid open. Noise washed over him. Low chatter. Clinking glasses. The murmur of power dressed in expensive fabric. Hajin stepped inside. He didn't have to look. He felt him. Somewhere to his left. Like gravity shifting. His gaze betrayed him. Across the room, surrounded by executives and investors, stood Kang Taewoo. Tall. Impeccably dressed in black, hair perfectly styled. The same face Hajin had seen in business magazines 100 times. The same face now burned into his memory for entirely different reasons. Taewoo was listening to someone speak, expression calm, almost bored. Then his eyes lifted. They locked. For a split second, the world seemed to drop into silence. No smug smile. No mocking curve of lips. No shock either, just recognition. A quiet, steady awareness that made Hajin's pulse jump. Taewoo inclined his head slightly. Not a greeting. Not a challenge. An acknowledgement. Like, I see you. I remember. Hajin looked away first. Coward. He hated himself for it. CEO Park. An investor intercepted him, saving him from having to think. Pleasantries followed. Handshakes. Polite smiles. Hajin responded automatically, his mouth moving while his mind stayed elsewhere. Every few seconds, his awareness drifted back. Where is he? What is he doing? Who is he talking to? It was ridiculous. He had spent years treating Kang Taewoo like an obstacle. Now his body reacted like Taewoo was a threat of an entirely different kind. Midway through the opening presentation, Hajin took his seat. 5 chairs down, someone sat. He didn't need to look. Warmth brushed against his side. Not touching. Too close. Hajin's shoulders stiffened. He forced himself to face forward. Taewoo's voice spoke quietly. You look awake. Not teasing. Not cruel. Neutral. That was worse. Hajin kept his eyes on the stage. Unlike some people, I don't abandon others in hotel rooms. Silence. Then, softly, you were asleep. Hajin's fingers curled against his thigh. And that made it acceptable. No, Taewoo said. Hajin finally turned. Their eyes met. Up close, Taewoo looked exactly the same. And not the same at all. There were faint shadows beneath his eyes. A tension around his mouth Hajin had never noticed before. I didn't know how you'd react when you woke up, Taewoo continued. I didn't want the first thing you saw to be me. Hajin let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Congratulations. Instead, I woke up thinking I'd been assaulted by a ghost. Taewoo's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. The word hit harder than Hajin expected. Not because it fixed anything. But because Kang Taewoo almost never apologized. Hajin turned back toward the stage. Don't flatter yourself. It doesn't change anything. Doesn't it? Hajin didn't answer. Because he didn't know. The presentation droned on. Hajin heard none of it. All he could think about was the space between their knees. How close Taewoo's arm was to his. How his body remembered things his mind refused to supply. Pressure. Heat. Hands. It made his skin feel too tight. When applause finally broke out, Hajin stood too quickly. I have another meeting, he said stiffly. Taewoo rose as well. Park Hajin. Hajin paused. Slowly, he looked back. We were both drunk, Taewoo said. But you weren't coerced. You weren't taken advantage of. You chose me. Hajin's breath caught. I don't remember choosing anything. Taewoo studied him for a long moment. You didn't look like you regretted it. Something dangerous flickered between them. Hajin felt his face warm. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe not, Taewoo said. Hajin turned and walked away. He didn't stop until he was in the bathroom, hands braced against the marble sink. He stared at his reflection. His eyes looked too bright. His lips too tense. Why does he remember everything? Why don't I? The imbalance made him furious. It also made him curious. Which was worse? Later that afternoon, fate, or some sadistic higher power, paired their companies in the same breakout discussion group. Small room. One table. No escape. They sat across from each other. Professional masks snapped into place. Cold smiles. Sharp words. Carefully constructed arguments. They dismantled each other's proposals with surgical precision. Anyone watching would see two titans clashing. No one would see the undercurrent. Every pointed remark carried double meaning. Every glance lingered a fraction too long. When Taewoo leaned forward to emphasize a point, Hajin's eyes betrayed him, tracking the movement of Taewoo's throat as he swallowed. Pathetic. When Hajin spoke, Taewoo's gaze flicked briefly to his mouth before returning to his eyes. Caught. Neither commented. By the time the session ended, Hajin was exhausted. Not from business. From pretending. As people filed out, Taewoo remained seated. So, he said quietly, are we going to keep pretending nothing happened? Hajin picked up his folder. That's exactly what I plan to do. Taewoo's lips curved, not in a smirk. In something softer. Good, he said. Me too. Hajin frowned. That didn't sound convincing. Taewoo stood. They were close again. Too close. I don't need it to be convincing, Taewoo said. I just need you to stop running. Hajin scoffed. I'm not running. Taewoo leaned in slightly. You didn't look away this time. Hajin hated that Taewoo was right. He stepped back. This changes nothing between us. We're still competitors. I know, Taewoo said. A beat. But we're not strangers anymore. Hajin left without another word. That night, alone in his penthouse, Hajin lay awake again. But this time, the questions were different. Not, who did I sleep with? But, why doesn't the idea of it being Kang Taewoo feel as wrong as it should? And the most terrifying one of all. What if Taewoo didn't leave because it meant nothing? But because it meant something neither of them knew how to face yet? Part 3, Cracks in the Armor. The first email arrived at 6:12 a.m. By 6:13, Hajin already knew it was going to ruin his week. From Industry Consortium. Subject, Emergency Joint Task Force Assignment. He skimmed once, then again, then slowly. 2 major tech companies. 1 shared crisis. 1 mandatory collaboration. PH Tech Kong Group. Hajin closed his eyes. Of course, he muttered. The crisis itself was serious. An international supplier had been exposed for falsifying security certifications. Half the industry had unknowingly integrated compromised components into their systems. Lawsuits were coming. Governments were circling. Someone needed to move fast. Unfortunately, that someone was apparently him. And Kang Taewoo. Secretary Lee hovered in the doorway. Sir. I assume you've seen the email. Yes. They've scheduled a joint strategy session for 9. Hajin looked at the clock. 2 hours. Plenty of time to mentally prepare for hell. The conference room was smaller than Hajin expected. Glass walls. A single long table. No audience. No press, just them, which somehow felt worse. Taewoo was already there. Seated, jacket off, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, focused on a tablet. The image was domestic in an unsettling way. Hajin stepped inside. Taewoo looked up, their eyes met. No tension this time. No challenge, just a quiet acknowledgement. You're on time, Taewoo said. Don't read into it, Hajin replied. Taewoo's mouth twitched. They sat across from each other. Laptops opened. Documents shared. Professionalism snapped into place like armor. For the first hour, they were flawless. They mapped risks. Assigned teams. Cross-checked suppliers. Argued sharply, but efficiently. No insults. No personal attacks. Just 2 brilliant minds colliding. Hajin hated how well they worked together. Hated how easily Taewoo anticipated his next move. Hated how Taewoo filled in gaps Hajin hadn't voiced yet. At one point, Hajin paused mid-sentence. Taewoo seamlessly continued the thought. And if we isolate the affected servers first, we minimize exposure before the audit begins. Hajin stared at him. Taewoo glanced up. What? Nothing, Hajin said. Except it wasn't nothing. It felt like standing on unfamiliar ground. They took a short break. Coffee appeared. Neither had ordered it. Taewoo slid one across the table toward Hajin. No sugar. Extra shot. Hajin frowned. How do you know how I take my coffee? Taewoo didn't look away. You ordered it at the hotel bar. Hajin froze. The room suddenly felt smaller. You remember that? Hajin asked quietly. Yes. Of course he did. Taewoo remembered everything. Hajin wrapped his fingers around the cup, mostly to give his hands something to do. Is there a lot you remember? Taewoo studied him. Enough. That answer sat heavy between them. They worked through lunch. The sun shifted outside the glass walls, unnoticed. Somewhere along the way, the edge between them dulled. They stopped snapping. Started asking. Listening. Actually listening. When Hajin grew frustrated with a data set, Taewoo leaned closer, pointing something out on the screen. Their shoulders brushed. Not accidental. Not exactly intentional. Neither moved away. Hajin hated that his first thought wasn't anger. It was awareness. He smells good. Clean. Subtle. Not overpowering. Why did he notice that? By early evening, they were alone. Assistants dismissed. Teams sent off with instructions. Only the two CEOs remained. Exhausted. Quiet. Taewoo leaned back in his chair. We did good work. Hajin scoffed. Don't get sentimental. I'm serious. Hajin hesitated. Yeah. We did. Silence settled. Not awkward. Not comfortable. Just, present. Taewoo broke it. About that night. Hajin's spine stiffened. I didn't bring it up. I know. Taewoo stood and walked to the window. The city stretched below them, glowing. I didn't leave because you meant nothing. Hajin's breath caught. I left because you were drunk. Hajin turned to him. You were drunk too. Not like you. Taewoo glanced back. You were open. Relaxed. Not guarded. Hajin swallowed. You kept smiling at me like I was someone you trusted. That landed harder than Hajin expected. Taewoo continued quietly. You kept asking if I was going to disappear. Hajin's heart thudded. I did. Taewoo nodded. You don't remember any of it? No. Taewoo exhaled slowly. You told me you were tired of being strong all the time. Hajin felt exposed in a way he didn't like. That doesn't sound like me. It is, Taewoo said. You just don't let people see it. Hajin looked away. So you took me to a hotel? Yes. And slept with me? Yes. And then left. I stayed until you fell asleep, Taewoo said. You were holding onto my shirt like you'd wake up if I moved. Hajin's chest felt tight. I left because I didn't want you to wake up and think I took advantage of you. Hajin laughed weakly. Congratulations. Instead, I thought I'd been abandoned. Taewoo turned fully toward him. I'm sorry. There it was again. That word. From Kang Taewoo. Hajin searched his face for sarcasm. There was none. Just sincerity. Which was somehow worse. Why me? Hajin asked quietly. Taewoo didn't answer immediately. When we argue, he said, you don't look at me like an enemy. That's ridiculous. You look at me like someone you're trying to understand. Hajin opened his mouth. Then closed it. Because he didn't know how to deny that. Taewoo took a step closer. One night didn't change our reality, Taewoo said. We're still rivals. We still want the same markets. The same dominance. Good, Hajin said. But, Taewoo continued, it changed how I see you. Hajin's voice came out rough. And how is that? Human. The word hit quietly. Precisely. Hajin looked at the floor. I don't know what to do with this. Neither do I, Taewoo said. Another step closer. They were standing within arm's reach. No touching. But everything else felt louder. I'm not asking for anything, Taewoo added. No labels. No promises. Then why say any of this? Because I don't want you thinking you were disposable. Hajin's throat tightened. I don't let people matter, Hajin said. Taewoo's gaze softened. You let me. Hajin should have denied it. Should have laughed. Should have walked away. Instead, he whispered, that's the problem. They stood there. Two men who had spent years treating each other like obstacles. Now faced with something far more dangerous. Understanding. Hajin broke the moment first. This doesn't make us friends. Taewoo nodded. It doesn't make us anything. Hajin grabbed his jacket. But, Taewoo added quietly, if you ever want to talk, without pretending. Hajin paused at the door. I'll think about it. Taewoo didn't push. Hajin left. But for the first time since waking up in that hotel room, the confusion felt different. Less like panic. More like possibility. And that terrified him more than anything else. Part 4, Lines They Pretend Not to Cross. The first message came at 11:47 p.m. Taewoo. Still awake? Hajin stared at his phone like it had personally offended him. He had spent the entire evening reviewing reports, answering emails, and very deliberately not thinking about Kang Taewoo. Which, apparently, had failed spectacularly. He typed. Hajin. Unfortunately. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Taewoo. Drink? Hajin frowned. That was it. No explanation. No justification. Just one word. It shouldn't have meant anything. It definitely shouldn't have made his heart beat faster. Hajin. Where? Taewoo. Your place or mine? Hajin's thumb hovered. This was dangerous. Not in a dramatic, scandalous way. In a quiet, slippery way. The kind that didn't feel like falling. The kind that felt like choosing. Hajin. Mine. 30 minutes later, Hajin stood in his kitchen, pretending to rearrange glasses that were already perfectly aligned. You are a grown man. You are not nervous. You have faced hostile takeovers and international lawsuits without blinking. You can handle one rival drinking whiskey on your couch. The doorbell rang. Hajin inhaled once. Then opened the door. Taewoo stood there in dark slacks and a charcoal coat, hair slightly damp from the night air. No bodyguards. No assistants. Just him. Hi, Taewoo said. Hajin hated that the word felt intimate. Don't make this weird, Hajin replied, stepping aside. Taewoo's lips curved faintly. Inside, the city lights spilled across floor-to-ceiling windows. Taewoo took off his coat and draped it over a chair like he'd done it before. Like he belonged. That thought made Hajin uncomfortable. They didn't sit close. They didn't sit far. They sat on opposite ends of the couch with a polite, careful space between them. Whiskey was poured. Glasses clinked. No toast. No celebration. Just, company. They talked about work. At first. A new encryption model. A stubborn board member. A regulator who enjoyed causing problems. It was easy. Too easy. Somewhere between the second and third drink, the conversation drifted. "What do you do?" Taewoo asked, "when you're not working?" Hajin snorted. "That is a terrible question. I'm serious." Hajin stared into his glass. "I read. Sometimes. Old novels. I don't tell people that." "Why?" "Doesn't fit the image." Taewoo studied him. "You care a lot about image." "I care about survival." Taewoo considered that. "I play the piano." Hajin looked up. "You're lying." "I'm not." "When?" "At night. When I can't sleep." Hajin tried to imagine Kang Taewoo, cold, ruthless Kang Taewoo, sitting alone at a piano. The image didn't fit. Which meant it probably was real. "Why tell me?" Hajin asked. Taewoo shrugged. "Didn't feel like lying." Silence settled. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just, present. They didn't touch. They didn't flirt. But Hajin was acutely aware of everything. The way Taewoo's knee angled toward him. The way Taewoo's gaze lingered when Hajin spoke. The way his own body felt warm in a way whiskey alone couldn't explain. When Taewoo left that night, nothing happened. Which somehow felt louder than if something had. After that, it kept happening. Late messages. Short invitations. No labels. No expectations. Sometimes they met at Hajin's place. Sometimes at Taewoo's. Sometimes at quiet bars with private booths and dim lighting. They never arrived together. They never left together. They never touched in public. They talked. They drank. They sat too close. They learned each other in small, dangerous ways. Taewoo liked his steak rare. Hajin hated cilantro. Taewoo slept with the window cracked open. Hajin needed complete darkness. They never said, "This is a thing." But it was. Hajin told himself it was harmless. Two lonely men. Temporary truce. Stress relief. Nothing more. Except. Hajin started noticing when Taewoo didn't message. Started checking his phone without realizing it. Started feeling off when days passed without seeing him. Which was unacceptable. The first crack appeared at a charity gala. Hajin hadn't wanted to attend. Secretary Lee insisted. Taewoo was there. Of course he was. They didn't approach each other. They didn't acknowledge each other. Across the ballroom, their eyes met once. Held. Then broke. Fine. Everything was fine. Until a man approached Hajin. Young. Attractive. A junior executive from a partner company. Charming. Persistent. "You look bored," the man said, smiling. "Let me save you." Hajin should have declined. He didn't. They talked. They laughed. The man leaned closer. Too close. Hajin was vaguely aware of a shift in the room. Like pressure changing before a storm. He glanced up. Taewoo was watching. Not expressionless. Not neutral. His jaw was tight. His eyes dark. The look was sharp enough to cut. Good, Hajin thought irrationally. Let him feel something. The man touched Hajin's arm. Light. Casual. Taewoo's glass cracked. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, unmistakable snap. Hajin stared. Taewoo set the broken glass down slowly. Excused himself. And walked out. The satisfaction Hajin expected didn't come. Instead, something cold settled in his chest. The man beside him was still talking. Hajin barely heard him. "I need some air," Hajin said abruptly. He followed Taewoo outside. The night was cool. Taewoo stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, staring at nothing. Are you jealous? Hajin asked before he could stop himself. Taewoo laughed once. Sharp. Don't flatter yourself. Your glass says otherwise. Taewoo turned. So you brought him over there to provoke me? Hajin bristled. I don't need your permission to talk to someone. I know. Then what's your problem? Taewoo stepped closer. Close enough that only Hajin could hear him. My problem, Taewoo said quietly, is watching someone touch what I haven't been allowed to. Hajin's breath caught. You haven't been forbidden. Taewoo's gaze dropped to Hajin's mouth. Then why haven't you let me? The question wasn't accusatory. It wasn't demanding. It was honest. Hajin didn't have an answer. Because the truth was terrifying. If he let Taewoo touch him sober, it wouldn't be a mistake. It would be a choice. I don't want this to ruin everything, Hajin said. Taewoo studied him. Everything meaning what? Hajin gestured vaguely between them. This. Whatever this is. Taewoo nodded slowly. Neither do I. A beat. But pretending we don't want each other isn't protecting it. Hajin's pulse hammered. Wanting doesn't mean we should act on it. Taewoo's lips curved faintly. Spoken like someone who's already acting on it. Hajin opened his mouth. Closed it. Because inviting Taewoo into his home at midnight. Because memorizing his habits. Because caring whether Taewoo left early or stayed late. Those were actions. Just quieter ones. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch. But something shifted. That night, Taewoo walked Hajin to his car. They stood there. Too close. Breathing the same air. If I crossed a line, Taewoo said, tell me. Hajin shook his head. No. Then what are we doing? Hajin swallowed. I don't know. Taewoo's voice softened. Me neither. He left. Hajin stood there long after the car disappeared. Realizing something deeply inconvenient. They weren't pretending nothing was happening anymore. They were pretending they could control it. And Hajin was starting to suspect. They were both lying to themselves. Part 5, When the World Finds Out. The rumor didn't explode. It seeped. Like ink dropped into water. Slow. Subtle. Impossible to contain once it started spreading. Hajin first sensed it in the way conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Not abruptly. Not obviously. Just, a half-second too late. Averted eyes. Phones turned face down. Polite smiles stretched a little too tight. He told himself he was imagining things. He was very good at lying to himself. Until Secretary Lee closed the office door and didn't sit down. That bad? Hajin asked. Secretary Lee swallowed. There are photos circulating among investors. Hajin felt his stomach drop. What photos? Secretary Lee placed a tablet on the desk. Hajin already knew before he looked. Not because he'd seen them. But because there was only one thing that could cause this particular kind of tension. The screen showed a grainy image. Outside a private bar. Late at night. Hajin, profile visible. Taewoo beside him. Close. Too close for coincidence. Not touching. But intimate in a way only people who were paying attention would notice. Another photo. Taewoo holding the door open. Hajin stepping inside first. Another. Them standing near a car. Faces angled toward each other. Private. Unaware. Hajin stared. They're not fake, Secretary Lee said quietly. No, Hajin replied. Because if they were fake, he'd feel relieved. Instead, all he felt was cold. How far has this gone? Boards are asking questions. Some investors are nervous. Media hasn't picked it up yet, but that's only a matter of time. Hajin leaned back in his chair. This was exactly what he'd feared. Not scandal. Not public outrage. But vulnerability. Anything that could be framed as emotional compromise was considered weakness. And Hajin Park was not supposed to have weaknesses. Do Kang Group's people know? Hajin asked. Yes. Of course they did. The thought of Taewoo dealing with this on his side, alone, made something twist in Hajin's chest. I want damage control prepared, Hajin said. Statements if necessary. Emphasize professional collaboration only. Secretary Lee hesitated. Sir, are you planning to speak with CEO Kang? Hajin's jaw tightened. No. Because if he did, he might say things he couldn't take back. Secretary Lee nodded. And left. The office felt too large. Too quiet. Hajin stared out at the city. He should end it. Whatever this thing was. Before it became a liability. Before it cost him everything he'd built. That was the logical choice. The safe choice. The Park Hajin choice. So why did the idea feel like suffocation? Taewoo didn't text that night. Which was worse than if he had. Hajin checked his phone far more times than he cared to admit. Nothing. By morning, the rumors had evolved. Nothing concrete. Just whispers. Speculation. Enough to make people uneasy. Enough to force Kang Group's board into action. Taewoo found out in a conference room filled with men who had never cared about his happiness. Only his usefulness. One of them slid a document across the table. A proposed acquisition. Aggressive. Brilliant. If Taewoo accepted, Kang Group would secure dominance in 3 major markets. It would crush PH Tech's expansion plans. It would make Taewoo untouchable. There is one condition, a board member said. Taewoo didn't pick up the document. He already knew. You want me to distance myself from Park Hajin? Publicly, another man said. Decisively. Silence stretched. You're suggesting, Taewoo said slowly, that my personal life is a liability. We're suggesting perception is reality, the chairman replied. Taewoo leaned back. And if I refuse? Then we reconsider how suitable you are to continue leading this company. There it was. The unspoken threat made explicit. Choose power. Or choose something inconveniently human. Taewoo left the room without answering. He drove. Didn't know where. Didn't care. Only one thought repeated in his mind. Hajin will leave first. Because Hajin was practical. Because Hajin believed in cutting losses. Because Hajin had been preparing for that from the beginning. By the time Taewoo arrived at Hajin's building, he had already braced himself for the worst. Hajin opened the door and froze. Taewoo stood there. No jacket. Hair slightly messy. Eyes dark. Not angry. Not cold. Worried. Hajin's heart slammed painfully against his ribs. We shouldn't be seen together right now, Hajin said automatically. Taewoo stepped inside anyway. You've heard. Yes. Good. The door closed. Silence wrapped around them. Hajin crossed his arms. This was inevitable. Taewoo stared at him. So that's it? What do you want me to say? Hajin snapped. That this was a good idea? That 2 rival CEOs secretly orbiting each other wouldn't eventually blow up? Taewoo took a step closer. You're already distancing yourself. Hajin laughed harshly. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Clean break. No complications. Taewoo shook his head. I wanted honesty. Hajin looked away. Honesty doesn't protect anything. No, Taewoo said. But lying kills it. That hit too close. Hajin swallowed. My board will push me to deny everything, Hajin said quietly. To make it clear we're nothing. Taewoo studied him. And what do you want? The question felt unfair. Dangerous. Hajin didn't answer. Because the truth was simple. And terrifying. He wanted Taewoo. Not as a mistake. Not as a late-night secret. Not as an unspoken almost. He wanted him openly. Which meant wanting something that could be taken away. Taewoo spoke again. My board offered me a deal. A big one. Hajin's chest tightened. And? They want me to publicly cut ties with you. Hajin nodded. Of course. That makes sense. I haven't accepted. Hajin looked up sharply. You should. Taewoo frowned. Why? Because it secures your company. And loses you. Hajin forced himself to meet Taewoo's eyes. We were never supposed to be anything. Taewoo's voice softened. And yet here we are. Hajin felt something crack. I don't want to be the thing that costs you everything, Hajin said. Taewoo took another step forward. I don't want to be the man who keeps choosing power and wakes up alone. They stood inches apart. No touching. But the air between them felt electric. Hajin whispered, if we do this, it won't be easy. Taewoo's answer came immediately. I know. We'll be watched. I know. Judged. I know. Hajin's voice shook. I don't know how to love someone without planning for the worst. Taewoo's expression softened. Then let me stay anyway. That did it. Hajin laughed once. Broken. You're infuriating. Taewoo's lips curved faintly. You're worth it. Silence fell. Not heavy. Not suffocating. Full. Hajin exhaled slowly. I don't want to hide from you. Taewoo's breath hitched. I don't want to be hidden by you. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The choice had already been made. Taewoo reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. In front of Hajin, he typed. Then turned the screen. A message to his board. I will not distance myself from Park Hajin. If that is unacceptable, we will discuss my position. Hajin stared. You're insane. Taewoo smiled slightly. Probably. Hajin felt something warm and terrifying bloom in his chest. Then I'm insane too. Taewoo tilted his head. Meaning? I won't deny you exist. Taewoo stepped closer. This time, Hajin didn't move away. They rested their foreheads together. Not dramatic. Not performative. Quiet. Steady. Two men choosing each other in a world that would prefer they didn't. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, something fragile and powerful took root. Not a fairy tale. Not a perfect solution. But a promise. We face it together. And for the first time, Hajin didn't feel like he was standing alone. Part 6, Choosing Each Other. The fallout did not arrive in a single dramatic explosion. It arrived in waves. Meetings that ran too long. Phone calls that came too early. Faces that smiled but calculated. Silence that felt heavier than shouting ever could. Hajin learned quickly that choosing Taewoo did not mean the world suddenly became kind. It meant the world became honest. Brutally so. The first board meeting after the rumors reached mainstream media lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of carefully worded concern. 4 hours of thinly veiled warnings. 4 hours of people pretending they weren't asking Hajin to trade a human being for stability. One board member cleared his throat. CEO Park, we're not questioning your competence. Another added, we're questioning optics. Hajin folded his hands on the table. Optics don't run my company, he said evenly. Our investors disagree. Hajin met their gazes one by one. Then they're welcome to leave. Silence. Not shocked. Not outraged. Weighing. Finally, the chairman spoke. You're willing to stake your position on this? Hajin didn't hesitate. Yes. The word felt solid. Heavy. Right. He expected fear to follow. It didn't. What followed was something steadier. A strange, unfamiliar calm. For the first time in his career, Hajin wasn't maneuvering to protect an image. He was protecting a person. And that changed everything. Taewoo faced similar battles. Different faces. Same threats. Same implication. Be sensible. Be strategic. Be alone. One senior executive said, "You're choosing emotion over logic." Taewoo replied calmly, "I'm choosing a future I can live with." That ended the conversation. Not cleanly. Not pleasantly. But definitively. When Taewoo told Hajin about it later, they were sitting on Hajin's couch, shoes off, jackets discarded, city lights painting the walls in muted gold. "You didn't have to do that," Hajin said quietly. Taewoo glanced at him. "Yes, I did." Hajin studied his hands. "I don't know how to be someone worth this kind of risk." Taewoo shifted closer. "You already are." Hajin didn't argue. Not because he fully believed it. But because he wanted to. The public response was mixed. Some headlines were vicious. Speculative. Cruel. Others were surprisingly neutral. A few were quietly supportive. Neither of them gave interviews. They released one joint statement. Short. Carefully worded. Honest without being intimate. Park Hajin and Kang Taewoo acknowledge a personal relationship that does not interfere with their professional responsibilities. Both companies remain fully independent and committed to ethical competition and cooperation. No denial. No apology. No justification. Hajin read it over 3 times before approving it. His finger hovered over the send button. "This is the point of no return," he said. Taewoo nodded. "Good." Hajin sent it. The world did not end. It also did not magically improve. But something shifted. The hiding stopped. They didn't walk red carpets together. They didn't hold hands at conferences. They also didn't pretend they didn't know each other. Sometimes they arrived at events separately and left separately. Sometimes they arrived separately and left together. Quiet. Unannounced. Intentional. At an industry banquet a month later, someone asked Hajin, "Is CEO Kang attending tonight?" Hajin answered calmly, "Yes." "And you're on good terms?" Hajin met their eyes. "Yes." That was all. It felt revolutionary. Their relationship didn't suddenly become easy. They still argued. About business. About boundaries. About control. Hajin's instinct was still to pull back when things felt too real. Taewoo's instinct was still to push forward. They learned each other in slow, imperfect ways. One night, after a particularly brutal day, Hajin snapped. "You make it sound so simple. Choosing. Staying. Like it doesn't scare you." Taewoo didn't raise his voice. "It scares me all the time." Hajin blinked. "Then why do you look so calm?" Taewoo stepped closer. "Because I decided a long time ago that fear doesn't get to decide my life." Hajin looked away. "I don't know how to do that." Taewoo reached out. Not touching. Offering. "Learn with me." Hajin hesitated. Then closed the small distance between them. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No fireworks. No sweeping gestures. Just two men standing close enough that their shoulders brushed. Choosing proximity. Choosing not to retreat. They still hadn't labeled themselves. Not boyfriend. Not partner. Not officially. But the word hovered between them. Unspoken. Understood. The first time they were photographed holding hands, it was accidental. They had gone to a late dinner at a quiet restaurant outside the city. No reservation under their real names. No entourage. Just them. When they left, Hajin had reached for Taewoo's sleeve without thinking. Taewoo had laced their fingers together without asking. A single photo. Blurry. Taken from across the street. It surfaced the next morning. Hajin stared at it on his phone. They weren't kissing. They weren't hiding. Just, connected. Taewoo watched his face carefully. Do you regret it? Hajin studied the image again. No. He didn't. No. Taewoo's shoulders relaxed, just slightly. They didn't release a statement. They didn't deny it. They went to work. The world adjusted. Slowly. Reluctantly. But it adjusted. Months later, Hajin stood in the same hotel room where everything had begun. Not alone. Not drunk. Not confused. The room looked smaller than he remembered. Or maybe he had just grown. Taewoo stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city. You picked this place on purpose, Taewoo said. Hajin didn't deny it. I wanted to prove something to myself. What? That I don't associate this place with shame anymore. Taewoo turned. And? Hajin walked toward him. Stopped a step away. It worked. Silence settled. Soft. Warm. Hajin spoke quietly. I don't remember that night. I know. But I remember every night after. Taewoo's gaze softened. So do I. They stood there, close. Not rushed. Not desperate. When they kissed, it was slow. Unhurried. Fully conscious. No alcohol. No confusion. Just choice. Hajin rested his forehead against Taewoo's afterward. I don't know what the future looks like. Taewoo smiled faintly. Neither do I. A beat. But I know who I want to face it with. Hajin's chest tightened. Me too. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, two men who had started as rivals stood together. Not perfect. Not fearless. But certain. They had begun as a mistake. They had become a risk. They had chosen to become real. And for Hajin Park, that choice felt like the greatest success of his life.